me. It's kind of like, you're doing a card shuffle of your tarot cards and you pull a card and you're like, I didn't want that one. And you put it back in and you shuffle, 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 and it pops out again. Our intuition acts a lot like that pretty often. Welcome to the Glow Up Revolution podcast, a podcast for overgivers, overachievers, and the strong ones in the room. We discuss everything from neuroscience-based burnout prevention to magic spells we can cast for upcoming job opportunities and everything in between. Welcome. Sit back, relax, and enjoy. Welcome back to the Glow Up Revolution. I am your host, Megan Winkler. And today I want to start off with a question for you. And I want you to actually sit with it for a second before we dive into the meat of this episode. So here's the question. When was the last time you had a strong feeling about something, like a relationship, a job, a decision, and you really genuinely didn't know if it was your gut telling you the truth or if it was your anxiety telling you a story? That's what we're talking about today. And confusing the two is not a flaw. It is not a weakness. It is not anything you're doing wrong. It's actually a pretty sophisticated problem. And a lot of emotionally intelligent people face this problem of trying to figure out the difference between their intuition and their anxiety. So we're going to try and untangle it a little bit today. This episode is really about discernment. So how to tell the difference between those two. And we're going to try to do it in a way so that we're not gaslighting ourselves, because it's really easy for us to identify gaslighting in other people, right? The problem is we will also gaslight ourselves. So we're not going to gaslight ourselves today, okay? We are also going to recognize that there's a lot of really well-meaning advice out there that talks about intuition, that talks about trusting your gut, and it may not have hit for you. It may not resonate with where you're at. Excuse me. All right, so before we dive into the episode itself, I do want to add a caveat to this, that this episode is not about diagnosing anything. It is not a replacement for therapy, medical advice, anything like that. And in fact, it's not therapy at all. Okay, it really is just an invitation to identify the signals that your physical and energetic bodies are sending you. We have a physical body and we have an energetic body. And that's one of the things that I really learned to differentiate when I was going through my Reiki certification. And we work with the energetic body to bring balance to the physical body when you're doing Reiki and some other energy work as well. So both are interacting in your everyday life. And so just identifying the signals that is happening in all of your selves, your body, your energetic body, all of that. And if you're watching on video, I'm kind of waving my hand around in front of my face to say, all of that is normal and natural and just a part of who we are. But when we can identify those signals and kind of understand where it's probably your intuition talking or it's probably your anxiety talking, we can move forward in a lot of self-trust. Why is this important? First of all, it's important because we do experience burnout. And when we're in burnout, our anxiety goes through the roof. Even if you don't have anxiety or an anxiety disorder, like something diagnosed or something that you're seeking treatment on, burnout can kind of cause that within us. So when we're burned out, we're feeling depleted. And remember, it is from constant stress, chronic stress, running on fumes, just kind of barely keeping up with your life. So in this state, your nervous system is kind of in this constant low grade alert status. So anything that feels like a threat makes everything seem like, I don't know, it's almost like charged with static electricity. Like it's all like a much bigger threat. And your intuition is kind of like this radio station. I know, I'm old. What can I say? Back in them good old days, we had radios and you had to tune the antenna. You had to move the antenna in such a way to catch the radio signals that were moving through the air. I know, youngins, if you're listening, those bunny ears that you see on like Stranger Things and shows like that, those are real. And they're a pain in the ass. But your intuition is kind of like that radio station trying to transmit that clear signal to those antennas. And when you're in burnout, it's like living next to a power line. And if you ever live next to a power line, or your parents or grandparents or whatever did, it could create interference in that antenna, right? So it's still coming, but it's muddled. It's hard to get through. The picture's foggy. It's very hard to understand. So when you are in those periods of more overwhelm, of even exhaustion, or feeling like you cannot trust yourself, then it's harder to tap into that inner voice. And it can feel like it's even broken. So let's talk a little bit about the physiological, the actual physical difference between what anxiety might feel like and what intuition might feel like to you. So again, these are generalities. I'm not saying yours feels like this, but for most people, this is what this feels like. So anxiety tends to feel like tightness in your chest or in your throat, kind of like closing up, almost like it's choking you a little bit. It can feel like racing thoughts that are spiraling outward and seemingly out of control. It can feel like a sense of urgency that doesn't have a clear source. Like you're not really sure why you feel like you have to do something right now, but you just do. And it tends to get louder when you feed it. And I say feed it because sometimes what we're doing in our behavior, it's not necessarily a wrong behavior, but it might be fueling it a little bit. It might be fueling that anxiety a little bit. So when you ask it a follow-up question, then there's 10 more worries to come to the surface. And there's 10 more worries that are ready to just be like, oh my gosh, but what if this? What if this? What if this? And it's kind of like with our anxiety, if we're dealing with it, we can ask a question like, what if an elephant fell out of the sky? And if we're not in an anxiety state, we just be like, that would never happen. Or, wow, wouldn't that be horrible? Poor elephant. If we're in anxiety, like, as ridiculous as it sounds, we could actually think, what happens if an elephant did fall out of the sky? Where would it land? Would it have a parachute? What happened if it didn't have a parachute and landed on my house? What happened if it did have a parachute and landed on my house? See, it's just like all of these other questions, right? So that's generally speaking what anxiety feels like. Intuition, on the other hand, is much quieter. It is a knowing that happens more in our center. So more the center of our chest, heart center, into our solar plexus, and even further down into our sacral and root chakras. So that our root chakra is our base and our foundation. So just really feeling more grounded in the body. I was going to say heavier in the body, but that's not right. More grounded in the body. There's also the sense of settling. Again, like we're settling into that center of knowing, your solar plexus, sacral chakra areas, right? There's also this sense that it's brief and clear. Like your intuition just says the thing and gets to it. It doesn't feel like it has to explain itself. And then if you ask it a follow-up question, it doesn't generate new fears. It tends to repeat the same message calmly, maybe a little differently. It's kind of like, you're doing a card shuffle of your tarot cards and you pull a card and you're like, I didn't want that one. And you put it back in and you shuffle, 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 and it pops out again. Our intuition acts a lot like that pretty often. It's like, no, this is the answer. Again, these are not absolute rules. Bodies, humans, energies, all of that. We're all different, right? But if you're paying attention to kind of the quality of the sensation you are feeling, whether it feels panicked and choking and fearful, or if it feels quiet and grounded and more subtle, those are some pretty good benchmarks to then start identifying your own reaction and your own experience with both. I do want to bust a few of the common myths around this intuition versus anxiety conversation. And the first one is that intuition is loud and dramatic. It's really not. I've heard people say things like, trust your gut. Your gut is screaming to you. No, it's probably not. It sounds really dramatic and cinematic, but usually intuition is quieter than that. It will deliver a message. If you don't listen to it, it'll deliver a message again, and it's like you need to be in this place where you can slow down enough to hear it. If something is loud and dramatic, especially if it is a voice in your head that is catastrophizing things or spinning out, that is probably not your intuition. That is probably your anxiety. And it's probably in response to a perceived threat for your nervous system. Okay. Another myth is if it feels bad, it's anxiety. If it feels right, it's intuition. So, mostly correct. However, your intuition can deliver uncomfortable messages that don't feel good, that actually feel bad at first. It could be like leaving a relationship, quitting a job, setting a boundary. These are really hard things to do. So your intuition absolutely can deliver a message to you that doesn't feel great at the beginning. And then also, I mean, you got to think about it. Your anxiety is part of that fight, flight, freeze, or fawn response, right? So it might feel real right to get the heck out of Dodge if you realize somebody is in a situation with you and they feel dangerous. Okay, so it's not a this or that, black and white, either or situation. And finally, myth number 3 is that you should always be able to explain your intuition. No, there's this thought that our intuition, because it's clear, is like super easy to explain. And that's just not the case. I have for a very long time realized that sometimes the answer is just to follow the intuition, not try to logic it out, not try to rationalize it, anything like that. Just go with it. It's okay. Sometimes your brain processes the information faster than your conscious brain realizes, right? Sometimes it's just like intuition hit, signal to brain, done, and then like you're thinking about it, right? So don't feel like you have to explain your intuition to yourself, first of all, or to anyone else. I mean, obviously, if you're telling your spouse that you're like, I don't know, it feels weird. I don't want to go to this event. Talk about it, but explaining it might not be the easiest thing to do, and that's okay. So in the moment, we can actually check in with things, and I want you to remember the word pace, P-A-C-E. Pace yourself instead of treat yourself. Anyway, PACE stands for pause, ask, check the body, and examine. So pause is before you do anything, just stop, just take a breath. You're not trying to fix something. You're not trying to figure it out. Just create a little space between what you're feeling and your reaction. And then ask, is this something to feel afraid of? Almost always anxiety comes from a fear. And if you name it, I'm afraid of being rejected, I'm afraid of making the wrong choice, the anxiety often gets quieter because you're actually listening to it. You're opening a dialogue with your anxiety. Okay. And then your intuition tends not to be fear driven. It's a little more neutral, and an observation is just a warning. Then for C, you're going to check your body. So where do you feel it? Is it tightness? Is it constricted? Is it frantic? That could be anxiety. Is it quieter, more settled, solid? Something that you can't quite put your finger on or explain, but you just feel like it's right. It could be your intuition. This isn't foolproof, but again, it is data. And then examine your timeline. So has this feeling been happening for a long time? Has it been quietly persistent? Or did it spike in response to something that triggered you? Because your intuitive power tends to stick around, and it tends to be very neutral and grounding and consistent in its messaging. Anxiety often surges in response to a trigger or shifts and changes focus during other circumstances. It can also be something that you've had for a long time, but it again, start looking at like how it feels. Is it that constriction? Is it scary? And the reason why we're kind of going through this is I think it's really important to reframe what we have been talking about in terms of anxiety. Like, anxiety is one of those things that the wellness and health industry says we need to like fix it, right? Um, and indeed, there are some forms of anxiety that are really disruptive to a person's life, and they do need to be treated. But anxiety in general, generally speaking, is a response to something that's going on, and it's your nervous system trying to protect you. Your nervous system is always scanning for threat. It is trying to keep your body safe. And it's not a problem that this exists. It becomes a problem when your anxiety is overreactive. It fires off at like the smallest thing. It becomes disruptive in your life, right? So if you notice that you suddenly have anxiety out of nowhere, absolutely seek some help in the form of therapy, counseling sessions, that sort of thing. Also, might be a good idea to see your medical practitioner because it could be something going wonky with your hormones. And also, it's a good thing to check in with yourself and say, what is my anxiety trying to protect me from right now? Because it might be something that's happening in your environment that you're not like logically seeing, but your body is picking up on. And again, your intuition is always going to be quieter and more consistent. So I want to close with a final thought to remind you that it is normal and natural to struggle to tell the difference between intuition and anxiety, especially if you are currently in a burnout state, if you're dealing with a lot of stress, or you're brand new to tapping into your intuition. That's okay. Discernment is a practice, much like our magical practice is, and you're allowed to not know. It's Trudy barking in the background, sorry. Your inner landscape is not always something to be fixed or solved. It's not necessarily broken. Again, if you need therapy, go to therapy. I love therapy. I've had some amazing therapists over the years. If you need medical intervention, go see your provider. I did just recently and realized that some of my anxiety was coming from some high blood pressure. So guess what? Fixing the physiological and the mental is following that, right? But even in those heightened states of anxiety, it helped me so much to say, okay, what's going on? Why is this tripping me up? How can I move through it? Is there anything I can do right now to fix this for myself? So again, it's just opening that dialogue with yourself. It is having that conversation with yourself, and it is supporting yourself in all the ways that you need to be supported. Thank you again so much for being here. I could not do this show without you. Y'all inspire me. Thank you so much too to all of my Patreon supporters. Y'all are amazing, and I am so grateful for you. If you'd like to join the Patreon, the link is in the show notes. You just have to search for the Glow Up Circle on Patreon. You can join for free, or the tiers start at $3 a month, where you start getting some cool little PDFs and printables and extra things, including the weekly tarot and astrology energy for the week. And I have my hands up in like this little paragraph block because it really is just like a little snack. It's like an energy snack for the week. Comes out on Sunday morning, so you can add it to your journal, add it to your Sunday morning reading practice, and really tune into the energy for the week. I am loving these, quite honestly, and Patreon members are as well. If you want to hang out online, come by Instagram. It's Megan Winkler. And on YouTube, I've got a YouTube channel. It's Megan Winkler. And I would love to hear from you. So swing by my website or send me an email. All of those links are in the show notes. And until next time, my friends, take care of yourself. Stay safe out there. Take care of each other. And as always, stay magical. Bye.